Paladins developers have responded to a lot of criticism that their game is merely a free-to-play clone of Overwatch. And VideoGameDunkey also did a video mocking some of the similarities, which is hilarious by the way, and is a bit of comedy worth watching, but some more of the avid Overwatch community have taken it a little literally. Like everything on the internet, it is somehow developed into juicy drama. And Overwatch being one of the most successful franchises in the history of gaming, with millions still on the hype train even after reaching the station, it has a lot of people passionate about it and willing to take up arms for the cause. I'm not really here to fight the case for Hi-Rez entertainment, but creativity in general really. Also, games that literally rip assets and code like the Chinese ripoff of Overwatch, I am 100% against too, and it's not what I'm talking about today. I'm going to come back to the idea of hero games being limited to certain sets of abilities and archetypes later, but for now, what have the Paladins devs got to say to fight their case with? Basically, today they have posted on Reddit in the games section and giving their case for why Paladins isn't a clone of Overwatch. Well, some of the big criticisms lie in the similarity of characters. Firstly, the turret building classes in both games, basically the rehash of Team Fortress 2's Engineer. The point of contention isn't the class type, it's more the fact that they are both dwarves doing the same role. They both have a red colour scheme and they both use a molten magma gun. Hi-Rez uploaded what they claim is the dwarf prototype for Paladins Prelude, a game called Aurum, now panned, which dates back to 2012. Sure, it's blue and it's hard to tell what the gun actually is, but at least it shows they didn't steal the dwarf idea. And the thing is, both characters look very similar to Dota 2's sniper class, which is basically a red themed dwarf. And dwarves in general are often linked to high technology, so it does kind of make sense they would fit in as an engineer class well. Let's look at the next one. Hanzo and Cassie are the archer classes, and which, to be honest, really aren't that similar when you play them in game. For example, Cassie's bow is more like a semi-automatic rifle. There isn't a pull-up time, and there isn't any bullet drop, or there's little bullet drop, if any. But again, Hi-Rez showed Cassie doing a forward roll and using her archery skills, again dating back to that Aurum in 2012. There's a tank class Fernando who's basically being panned for being Reinhardt, and the prototype this time from 2012 doesn't show the large shield effect, but it does show a charge ability and melee weapon in use. In some ways, Fernando has changed more since the initial concept, which was like Reinhardt, and now gained a ranged weapon and flamethrower over any melee engagement. Sure, he still has the shield, but I'm going to come on to that later. There are also a list of heroes that they were using as archetypes from their 2010 game Global Agenda, and things that look very similar from Overwatch. For example, a female healer that is basically a carbon copy of Mercy. She even has the halo and wings. And then there's a sword dude that is a very similar looking to Genji. Generic grenade guy, you know, you gotta throw one of those in there. And then a female Egyptian jump jetter that has an Anubis helmet on, almost the same as Pharah's skins in Overwatch. Did Overwatch copy Global Agenda then? OMG. No, it didn't. A few things. At the core of any creativity, there is some inspiration. Nothing creative comes from the void of nothingness. I think people often assume an artist or writer can sit down and come up with something completely original on a page, but that isn't the case, and usually that would be rubbish. Sure, this doesn't completely translate to games, but like fancy draws on Tolkien and Gygax, games also draw on lots of forerunners in their own genre for mechanics and popular culture for themes to create a good game. And with the hero-based genre being emergent, the biggest thing is that there's a limited amount of abilities you can have that will work with the game and will work well. You could take League of Legends and Dota 2 and Heroes of Newerth, suggest that they have all copied each other with similar characters and similar abilities. But the thing is, the type of game only allows for a limited set of modifiers. You have AoE damage, spells, slows, stuns, damage increases for ultimates. The thing is, there is so far you can go with it actually not playing well in the game. And even things that are a little exotic, for example Enigma from Dota 2's Black Hole pulling people into the center, the animation and concept are more original, but the ability really is just a snare and a stun with damage on it. It doesn't diverge from the basic variables in play. And these ability sets in the 3D space are even less well explored as what can work, partly because most things are skill shots and need to be balanced as a shooter more than a locked on nature of traditional MOBA spells. In some ways the games also draw a lot more on the arena based shooter genre for their inspiration because of the projectiles and abilities often having travel time. The arena shooter genre is another one where certain things work and others don't. Just take early Unreal Tournament and Quake, they really weren't that different in gameplay. And for example, you had the high damage rocket launcher and it's become the staple of the genre. Just take the new arena shooter Toxic, it has its own flavour and all of the archetypes of weapons from UT and Quake, but with a few additions here and there of course. But basically it's hard to call it a copy, just their own take on the genre. Going back to Paladins heroes, the shield ability on Fernando for example can now be seen on the shield character in Paragon 2, Epic's third-person MOBA type game. Are they copies of Overwatch? Well, maybe there was some influence in the size and aesthetic, but the bottom line is a shield needs to be effective and it has to be big when dealing with FPS shooters. And it is something that's found its way into the wider sci-fi shooter genre. Off the top of my head, the engineer in Battlefield 2142 could deploy a large shield to hide behind, and it was necessary for hiding against tanks, projectiles, and enemy fire. And I'm fairly sure there was a projected shield in Halo 3 you could pick up too. The thing is, it just works, and it's necessary for a support tank to function in the hero arena space, with projectiles moving in that 3D environment. I do understand that the pistol on a Draxus, for example, is very similar to the revolver McCree has in Overwatch, and it is cutting the line between uncanny and almost the same. But again, it doesn't particularly matter about the inspiration as much as it is a mechanic that does work in the shooter environment, and both games have different flavours of what these weapons are. So in short, some things just work with genres of games and developers stick with the gameplay concept. Creating completely new mechanics is often limited by the 3D space, balance and the shooting mechanics of the game. My biggest point here is that all of creativity has sources of inspiration and build on each other. And video games especially are limited by what they can do and what works. I don't want gaming developers to ever fear being muted because they just have used archetypes that work in other games of that genre, as it just curbs creativity and future innovation. We are standing on the shoulders of giants here, guys, and more games are not a bad thing. And if they are bad, they'll fail themselves. Money moves everything, and people aren't going to stick around if something is just a shallow imitation of a game. And in my opinion, Paladins isn't just a shallow imitation. It does have a lot of flavour and interesting characters that aren't in the Overwatch lineup. It's also a worthy free-to-play alternative to the game, and it does boil down to whether you want to spend money for the full experience or save your coin and grind for your heroes and abilities in Paladins. It has got its own flavour and mechanics too, with cards adding buffs and effects to your abilities that allow you to slightly specialise your character before matches, and purchases of items in game that buff your character the better you do, like items in traditional MOBA games. Is it a clone of MOBA games? Again, no. In some ways it's nice to have this flavour to differentiate it from Overwatch. In conclusion, please don't become the social justice warrior of video games and curb the ability to be creative and for developers to create competitors in the same genre. It's really important, guys. Anyway, that's my plea for the day. What does everyone else think? Does Paladins give enough flavour to tread the line between similar and a copy? And what do you think of Paladins if you've played it? And what other inspirations of Overwatch and Paladins can you think of? Be sure to let me know in the comments section below. If you thought this video didn't infringe on anyone's copyright, hit the like button. And if you want to keep up with the latest games and more, hit subscribe. I'm going to be at EGX tomorrow, so holla if you're there. And thank you all very much for watching. Until next time, Joshino.